Welcome to Evolving on Purpose with Matt Swartz. This podcast is where real leaders share the inner work behind their breakthroughs and where you'll find the tools and stories to work through whatever is holding you back from who you're meant to be so you can make the impact you're here to make and help change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 4 of the Evolving on Purpose podcast. People pleasing is what we're going to be talking about today. If you're listening along, you probably heard the interview with Mandy Decino and the coaching episode we did with her, and she's amazing, and she's doing great work with Women in Bloom and her personal growth and what she's creating for people. And one of the real things that really hit me about that conversation was the people pleasing pattern. And let me start off by saying this. The most reliable person that you know might be quietly falling apart, but you're rewarding them for it. That could be your key employee. That could be your wife. That was mine. It could be your kid, right? People pleasing looks different than you think it does. Okay. We're not talking about the timid pushover. Oh, I'll do whatever you want. I mean, yes, absolutely. That's people pleasing. Okay. We call that the fawn response, where I'm going to do anything you want me to do so that I can stay safe. And we're going to get into this a little later. So at one extreme end is the abused spouse, right? Is the worst case of that fawn response, people pleasing, right? But on the other side, there's a whole continuum. On the other side is the high performer who can't stop saying yes, who keeps trying to help, who keeps taking on everything for everybody else, but then slowly but surely eventually burns out. It usually goes through these cycles. And these can be year-long cycles or month-long cycles. Take on, crash. Take on, crash. Because they don't want to say no. And more importantly, because their value is tied to helping others. So I want to redefine what people pleasing looks like in leaders and high performers so that not only can you maybe see it in yourself, but see it in others, especially those that you care the most about, so that if somebody is people pleasing for you, even though you may like it, even though it may feel nice, trust me when I say it is unsustainable, and sooner or later you'll crash or they'll crash, because any of these survival patterns, and I'll go through all of them. And by the way, this is part of my framework when we look at what I call the 6 Fs, which are the fight or flight responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, you know those, but there's also fawn, fix, and flex. And these connect to different patterns that we see in my anxiety, my Alive framework for healing. And you'll also see in the 6 foundations of flow. I have the quiz. I have the quiz that allows you to take a look at your leader or high performer challenges, what's working, what isn't working. And this is one of the items that shows up. But so I'm probably going to go, like I said, I'll do some episodes that are kind of bigger umbrella on the frameworks. But this episode is a reaction to the conversation with Mandy. And I wanted to talk about this people pleasing. Okay, so what is people pleasing? Okay, people pleasing is not weakness. People pleasing is the engine of your success. Okay, where does it start? You're the kid that reads the room and figures out what everybody's thinking and feeling, and then figures out how to make them happy, and you become the kid that the adults rely on, sometimes out of necessity. I've had, some incredible clients. I had a client who, started working at age 13 because their family was broke and poor and they needed help, right? So he took that on. I can talk about experiences from my own life where I became sort of an emotional caretaker, especially to my mom, right, who needed additional support. And so I passively kind of took on that role, right? I didn't know what I was doing at the time. Right. I've had other clients who, their parents went through divorce, or they had personal challenges, or, the parents were not present unless that kid was helping them or doing for them. Right. Or they're a parent who is looking for that achievement, and they weren't achieving for their own needs. They were achieving because they wanted to make the parent happy, right? So it starts usually somewhere in childhood. I know, God, Matt, with your therapy crap, I know, but this is how it works. These patterns start early, okay? The core essence of this is I'm valuable when I'm needed. Or perhaps I'm valuable when nobody's upset at me, or I'm valuable when I take care of others, right? Kids are trying to find their value. Who am I and what is my value, right? So the hard part here is that our world applauds this, right? I know so many clients who are like, mothers, launching their kids. I get a lot of these mothers that are launching their kids, right? And they're starting to empty nest. They've spent so much time doing for everybody else. They were applauded for being the mom that takes care of everything for their family, their husband, their kids, their whatever. The guy at work who helps everybody else's team and then his work slowly doesn't get taken care of. Or the boss who supports everybody, but then it kind of ends up plateauing their business, right? The world applauds people pleasing. I see, I was going to say, for so many of these women that I work with, they weren't necessarily identified as anxiety because they were pleasing their teacher, pleasing their friends, pleasing their parents. And that's like, well, that's what we want her to do. Well, yeah, but like, has she ever pushed back? Has she ever rebelled? And it's not just that women do this. I just see this a lot in my female clients. Men and women can do this alike, right? So how does this show up, right? How can you recognize people pleasing in yourself and in others? Okay. Number one is the over functioning. Okay. So what am I doing? I'm absorbing my team's anxiety and challenge. I'm trying to fix everybody and maintain everything and do all of these jobs. And essentially I become a bottleneck. And that can be either because I'm solving problems for my team instead of letting them solve themselves, or I'm being supportive, right? I'm taking care of everybody's emotions, but they become emotionally dependent on me. I'm preventing my kids from experiencing challenge because I don't want them to hurt, but then I end up robbing them of, different skills. Actually, I have an adult child who, is a client whose parent literally wrote a college essay for them because they couldn't. My advice: let them fail because they're not going to learn if you don't let them learn. That's obviously an extreme example, right? Okay. Here is the way that I want you to begin gauging this in yourself, okay? When is the last time that you said yes, but your body said no? Okay, what does that mean? That means when things feel heavier than they should. And I'm not talking about my wife asking me to get up off the couch and get her some snack, okay? Not that. But a deep heaviness, maybe it's a yucky in your stomach or in your chest, or you can feel it in your head, or maybe there's a part of you saying no, and there's a part of you saying yes, right? But there's a part of you that knows the answer is no, that this is too heavy, that this is too much. And whether it's because you had a difficult week or whether it's because it's a pattern for you, you've decided to take on more than you can handle, okay? Why is this bad? Well, number one, you're going to get exhausted. And sooner or later, you're going to crash and explode. This is, I have so many clients who come in at burnout stage, and it's so much harder to unwork burnout. It's like, I always say, burnout, it's like trying to push a car without gas to the gas station, right? You're trying to, it's already broken down on the side of the road. You're pushing it, right? The gas is low. Maybe I should go to the gas station, right? I want to catch people before they crash on the side of the road. I want to get to you before burnout, right? So number one, you can burn out. Number two is building resentment, right? So you start to, subtly resent the people that you're taking on these requests for. And I've certainly been there. This was a big factor in my work when I was working my last business that I was working for. I said yes to everything. And then I got angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier because I shouldn't have said yes to all the things I was saying yes to. Right? So I either go cold and I cut people off, or I start getting burnt out, or I start taking it out on them, or worse, taking it out on somebody else. For me, that was my journey. I didn't want to take it out at work because that felt unsafe for me. So I came and I took it out on my wife, who took it, or I took it out on my little kid, right? Who took it, right? Or, I didn't kick the dog, but, yelled at the dog, right? And then there's also just total shutdown and avoidance, right? I might get dissociated. I might, go to work, be the people pleaser, come home, play video games, play on my phone, numb out because I'm saying yes to all of these things that aren't really me, right? So, I just want you to examine, right? Do you feel overwhelmed by taking on too many responsibilities? Is there too much going on? Are you the bottleneck? Are you trying to do everything for your team? Are you trying to do everything at home, right? Are you saying yes because you think you need to make people happy? for you to be enough, right? And you might not even see the second thing. You might even just say, I just like making people happy. Okay, but are you exhausted? Is it too much, right? Do you have enough time for yourself? Do you know who you are? Do you know what you want? Or are you just doing everything for everybody else, and has that become your identity? Are you the chameleon? Okay, so why is this a problem? Let's talk about the leadership cost. Okay, let's talk about the cost, because this is ultimately for leaders, and you can think about at work, you can think about at home. Okay, number one, you can't give honest feedback. Okay, because you just want to make everybody happy. What does that mean? People stop growing. People grow in the midst of pain, not in the midst of comfort. So if you don't allow your team to deal with challenges, if you don't give them difficult feedback, well, they're going to stop growing and they're going to plateau, and then so are you. Okay. Number two, delegation becomes really challenging, right? If I'm trying to do it all myself and you absorb all the work, then risk disappointing somebody. You don't want to let a client down, so you're going to do it your best, and you're not going to delegate to other people because they might only do an 80% job. Well, then they don't learn, they don't grow. You can't grow a team. You become the bottleneck, and you can't delegate. Delegation is one of the most essential tools as a leader. Even if you're delegating to, AI, but it's got to be somebody somehow, right? Otherwise, you're going to stop growing. You're going to plateau. Okay. Number three, you're going to keep the wrong people around you because because letting go or disappointing them feels cruel, right? And so then you create this circle of people that you're constantly serving that aren't serving you. So you have this imbalance of energy. You have people around you who are trying to yank your energy and not giving it back. And again, that's not sustainable. And you end up growing a set of people around you that you are constantly maintaining and taking care of. And that can be a business, that can be a family, right? I want you to reframe. Okay. You think that you're protecting people, but you're actually robbing them of the truth they need. You are stealing from them their opportunity to grow. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to see that it's going to be challenging to grow a business. It's going to be challenging to grow a family if you're trying to do everything for everybody else. What you're going to have to do is get good at experiencing the pain of people struggling. Get good at experiencing the pain of being upset. And that's why we don't do it. Okay, because we don't want to deal with that pain. So let's go deeper. What is the invisible pattern? What is the underneath here? What are you missing? Okay, this fawn response is a survival strategy. It's not a personality trait. It may have been built when you were young or when you were medium young, right? But it's not who you are. It's who you've become or the way you're being, right? So what we want to do is we want to unbuckle that pattern, and beneath that is pain, right? Maybe people didn't show up for you. Maybe you didn't have enough support. Maybe you weren't, collaborated with enough, right? There's pain under there that's hurting that you don't want to get to. So you're just going to fawn, so you don't have to feel that, okay? Just be more assertive doesn't work. That's not the problem, okay? It's not that you're missing a new thing. It's that there's this underlying yucky feeling, right? I can't handle being disappointed, right? That feels like a threat. It's biological. Me disappointing somebody means I'm in danger. I won't get my needs met. I won't get the love I need. I won't get the support I need. I can only get that love and support if I'm performing and achieving and giving them what they need, right? Okay. So again, I think the best way to illustrate this is looking at my personal examples, right? And one I can give you at home and one I can give you at work. So let's start at home, right? So early in my relationship, I absolutely a people pleaser with my mom, and then just became a people pleaser with my wife, right? And so what that meant I would say yes to whatever she said, but then I wouldn't always follow through. That was one pattern, right? Another pattern was I did follow through on all of these things that I didn't really want to do, and I built and I grew resentment. And it took our relationship getting to a really difficult, rocky place for me to be able to work through some of those patterns and understand why I was doing what I was doing. We often, whether we marry our mom or not, that's up to you, right? But we often end up engaging in our primary relationship in the same way that we engaged with our early family and childhood, okay? In addition, if you look like very young, I was identified as a high achiever. And so at school, and so I was supposed to perform, I was supposed to do really well. So I would get good grades, all of this, impress my mom, right? Impress my dad, get good grades, right? And that translated into work. So, one of the reasons I had my panic attacks in New York is because I was trying to please this new director of mine that I couldn't please. Because number one, we just weren't good connection. It would just, she lived a different life. I lived a different life. This isn't her bad. This isn't I'm bad. It's just, we weren't a good fit, but I kept trying to make her happy and I couldn't do it. So eventually I burnt out at work. And then I started having these panic attacks. And I was probably doing the same thing in my relationship at the time, going back and forth between people pleasing and criticizing her, which then ultimately that relationship didn't work out. And then I can talk about my most recent job where I would take on all the different clinicians' challenges, my boss's challenges, everything. I would do everything because my hope was if I just did everything for all of these people, that then I would get my needs met. And the reality is that as time went on, I did not get my needs met. And I was exhausted. I was angry. I was burnt out, which is part of why, ultimately I left. Right. So, what I want you to see is that burnout process, right? What I want you to see is that pleasing turns into overcommitment, turns into resentment, turns into exhaustion, and then collapse, right? Most of the time, people come to me at the collapse, right? That's what forces the real evolution. If you are burnt out, if you're collapsing, I want you to ask yourself, is this because I've been trying to make everybody happy and I haven't figured out what I really need, right? So what does working through this look like? How does somebody recover from people pleasing, right? So let's talk about Mandy, right? Mandy was open with us that she, eventually got to a point where she'd been people pleasing throughout her entire marriage, her entire relationship, and finally collapsed. Right? That's what it looked like for her. So, again, I'm trying to prevent people to get to that collapse place, but, it might have been hard for her to see the signals along the way. And along the way, she lost herself. So the second phase of after that breakdown, first she was broken down. She admitted she was drinking a lot, right? But then after that, she had to rebuild and figure out who she was. Who was she really deep down? What was really core to her? Who did she really want to be, right? And she was able to move through into that recovery. So we want to take some wisdom from her and her journey that it's about, first you may need to numb to deal with the challenge. I don't recommend, but then after that, how can we figure out who we really are deep down? So what are some things to think about, right? Number one, kindness versus compliance. These aren't the same thing, right? We can be kind to somebody without doing everything that they want. Hey, I hear that challenge is really rough for you. How can I support you? Instead of, okay, I'll fix that for you, right? It's always that fix it is a knee-jerk reaction, right? Disappointing somebody can be an act of respect. What do I mean about that? What I mean is that if I disappoint you and I let you down, I'm not doing something you want me to do, underneath that says, I believe that you're capable. I believe that you can handle it, right? Instead of taking that on, which if you keep taking it on, the subtle message you're sending like that mom and that kid is, I don't think you're capable. And that's what that kid begins to grow over time is, well, she's doing it for me, so I must not be capable, okay? So the practice isn't saying no perfectly. It's tolerating the discomfort that comes, when you're saying no, right? That's really, it's not about, if I just say this and I just have some scripts or any of that. It's more about, can I tolerate the discomfort that occurs that's, again, pointing to those deep-rooted patterns of I'm not enough if I don't make them happy, right? People pleasers end up having pain if they don't fix it for people. So you have to learn how to process and tolerate that pain. Stage one, tolerate it in the moment. Stage two, come on with me and let's do the deeper work to rewire the pattern underneath on a biological level so it no longer hurts. So you don't have to just manage the pain in the moment, but you're actually able to extinguish that pattern going forward. Okay, so we're going to close this all down. I think you get the idea. You can see I'm passionate about it. What I want you to do is this is all about you, right? This is about you making the impact that you are here to make. I believe that most people early in their life had a sense of who they are and who they're supposed to be, but they end up losing that sense along the road because they're trying to make other people happy a lot of the time, right? So who are you really, right? Who you really are, you're going to discover. Who am I? What's the impact I was supposed to make? It's going to be underneath the version of you that's running on everybody's approval, right? If I didn't care what everybody wanted, what would I do? Right? That's the question to ask. What would my day look like today if I wasn't doing everything they wanted? What would I do? Right? Sometimes you just take a day off and you screw around and that's where it starts. But then you start connecting with that inner voice that says, here's where I want to be, or those ideas that have been in the back of your head that you want to create, right? Here's a question I want to leave you with. Okay. Where in your life are you being agreeable, but also dishonest? Where are you saying yes when you really need to say no? And even if you can identify one area, that's going to be a movement forward. But like I said, It's always going to be, you're going to hear me say this every single time. There's a deeper thing in there, right? I want you to start with that surface level, start with that question, but then allow it to draw you eventually, when you're ready, into the deeper pain of that pattern so we can actually heal it, so we can actually rewire it, so we can actually grow. And again, Mandy is showing us that when you're able to grow that, you're actually able to help more people. You're actually able to make a bigger impact, right? So these patterns, these 6 F's are always a temporary solution that only gets 20, 30, 40% of the job done and misses the big picture, right? How could I be using my talents and gifts and my energy to make a bigger impact if I wasn't just doing what everybody else wanted me to do? And again, we're not talking about, we're talking about this, it may even be strong, powerful person that's always saying yes, but has lost their sense of who they are. I hope this episode was helpful. I hope you gain a sense of people pleasing, where it's showing up in your life. And again, be aware if you have a team member, if you have somebody you're leading that's like this, if this is going on at home, trust me, it's not sustainable. Help, if you can, send them this episode, help them identify what's going on so that they can get out of this pattern too. And that can make a real difference in their lives and your lives. I'm so thankful you're here with me. I hope that I can be helpful to you pointing out these patterns. People pleasing is just one of these 6 main patterns that I'll go through with you in future episodes. Okay. I hope this is helpful, and I hope this helps you change your life so you can change others. This episode resonated with you. That's exactly why we built this. The work you're doing matters. And it's not meant to be done alone. So make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening, and share this with another leader in your life who's ready for something deeper. You can also follow along on Instagram between episodes for more tools, reflections, and real conversations, and let us know what you want to explore next to help you on your journey. This is bigger than just a podcast. This is a movement. It's a community of authentic leaders who are choosing to grow, to heal, and to step into who they were meant to be so that we can make the impact the world actually needs. Thanks for being here. And as always, let's keep evolving on purpose together.